Is it time for Red Reboot to be unbanned? And now I know there are a lot of players jumping for joy at the thought of Red Reboot going back to one in the TCG, and honestly, I'm one of them. But as a previous Eldritch player, and I know this is all making a lot of sense now, but I was not too much of a fan of Red Reboot way back in the day when it seemed like if you were going first with the trap deck like Eldritch, your opponent could just use one Reboot and it was pretty much game over. But in the modern age of Yu-Gi-Oh right now that everyone's playing in, Red Reboot would not be quite as detrimental as we once saw in the previous metagame. And now, if you do not know, fresh off the press, I was actually on his channel last week, so do go check that out. Link down below, and we actually talked about a bunch of ban list options, and Red Reboot is one that I definitely had to bring up, and that is because we do believe that Konami is going to be pushing us into a semi-trap metagame, and I think we're seeing the kind of beginning stages of this with cards like Dominus Impulse, like Dominus Purge, even all the trap support given to Odeon that, isn't honestly that good right now, but I think with a little bit more love, or even some support in the future that we see that they are giving to Eldritch, trap cards can make their grand return to the Yu-Gi-Oh metagame scene. Because as we know, a long time ago, they were pretty much the staples. But this leaves Red Reboot in a very interesting position. And then if you look at the metagame in OCG, we actually see Red Reboot side decked in a majority of the sides. And that is because traps have been gaining momentum in the metagame with Dominus Pulse, Dominus Purge, and then even Majesties of the Dragons of White just kind of dominating the metagame right now. And then not only are we having all this trap support being reprinted for us like Silo Hat Rabbit, or new support coming to us like the Eldritch, but we see over in the OCG, Red Reboot is already gaining momentum in players' side decks. And again, with Konami kind of issuing the new standard of traps being able to be activated from the hand, which they need to be able to do in the future, kind of like we mentioned in our future trap meta video, we see Red Reboot will be essential going into the future trap meta of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why I do believe it's time that it goes to one in the TCG. And now, it was broken way back in the day, but kind of moving into the future, I don't think it's as detrimental as we once saw. Yes, you can use it right off the rip. Yes, you cut them off of traps, but a lot of the times you're going to be using this going first. So if you go first and you're setting up your combo line and your opponent uses anything like Dominus Impulse, Dominus Purge, right now, unless you have an Omni on the board, you have no way of stopping that. We have all sorts of ways to stop monster effects, including ways to punish like the triple tactics, talents, and thrusts, but there's nothing for the traps. So when we move in the future and we have things like infinite permanence, the dominances, or anything else that Konami prints that can be used from the hand, right now we have no out. So Red Reboot will be that nice one of that we can actually utilize against decks that use the hand traps. And now, it doesn't shut them out completely. If you will note, you will have to pay half your life points just to activate it from the hand. That's kind of crazy right there. Then not only do you just send their card to the graveyard, you reset it. So they don't lose their resource, they just don't get its effect that turn. And then they get to set another trap from their deck. I don't know about you, but this is not sounding really good for the going first player. Yes, you get your one effect through, that's really nice, but you lose half your life points, their card is reset on the board, and then they get another card to be using against you on the following turn, which at that point might be pretty detrimental. But again, I do believe Red Reboot will still be seeing some play because, obviously as we see in the OCG, it's still pretty good. And when you look at cards like Dimensional Barrier that would actually cut the entire turns and off of things like Yugioh, Pearly, and other meta decks, there was no option to be going against them unless you were using the card in your side deck to be kind of utilizing Crossout Designator, which was not always a good option unless you were already playing the card. So Red Reboot, although it's a powerful card and played in the OCG right now, I think this is a card that could definitely come to one in the TCG. And as we mentioned fresh off the press episode, that there are many cards on the ban list like Red Reboot that could definitely come to one such as Sekka's Light. And if Konami doesn't unleash these cards, they'll kind of wait past their, perfect time, and then by the time they release them in the future, they'll be useless, like Magician of Faith. So Konami could definitely put Red Reboot 2-1 in the future of TCG. And now, it was not on my most recent ban list prediction video, and honestly, I kind of wasn't looking at it that directly at the time, but it could potentially be coming off this list or on the next following list after a bunch of the trap cards get their support, and things like Outlich are in the metagame a little bit more than they are right now. So do you think that Red Reboot will be going to 1 in the TCG, or do you hate the card, do you love your traps, and you want this card never to come back? Definitely comment them down below of what you think. But again, I do believe we're going to be going into a future trap meta, and if you're interested in that, definitely check out that video up above, because I assure you, it is going to be important moving into the future. But as always, guys, stay safe, have a good night, and suck it, nerds.